view these at a later time. But for all of you joining us now in the future, we really do appreciate you participating in our community this way. And thank you, candidates, for running and doing this. It's such a great service to our community just to toss your hat into the ring and to discuss these important issues. So thank you for running. Thank you for being here with us tonight. My one logistical reminder is that just because folks in the room may be able to hear you without the mic, folks online cannot hear you without the mic. So please be sure to speak into the mic so we make sure that we get a really great recording and a great live feed. And that is what I have for logistics. So it is always our pleasure to partner with the League of Women Voters to do these candidate forums. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynn.
I'm worse with this than anybody else, I think. Okay, can you hear me? Very nice. All right, so I'm Lynn Epina, and I'm the president of the local league, the League of Women Voters of Laramie. And I too would like to welcome you, and I'm so impressed that you're all here. Very nice. As you know, we run forums every election cycle, and I'm glad to say that we're going to have one this time. And I'm also going to say that I don't think there's a single race that's unopposed. So we don't have to worry about a lone candidate, you know, up here with nobody to exchange with. Yes, isn't that something? And they're all contested, and we invite everybody. Sometimes it's hard to invite people. We have a missing person right now, but he's going to try to get here. And I told him to come in his work clothes, and he could come in any time. And afterwards, we have about a half an hour for chit chat, and he might just come for that. We'll see. What? I didn't have as much time for my own words. Okay, so I don't think I'm going to say that much about the primary elections themselves right now. You know, it's going to be on the 20th. We don't get to start having our absentee ballots counted until the 23rd of July, so there's a lot of time. All of our forums are going to fit in before that. So you may as well, even if you've received your absentee ballot, you know, there's no reason to get ahead of yourselves. Our last forum is going to be on the 25th. So it's every Thursday until the 25th, excluding the 4th of July. I think that may be all I'm going to say, except to once again say, get close to the mic, okay? And also, if you're watching us on Facebook, either now or recorded, there's a little button you can push and you get a simultaneous translation. Not, you know, covering the candidate and the view, but it appears over on the side. So that's something to take advantage of. And the city, we're appearing on the city's TV channel, and they now have YouTube. And they were really quite eager that we put ourselves on them. I was going to suggest to them that maybe their time had passed for us. They said, oh, no, now we have Facebook. All right, well, I handed around a sheet of paper for some. I don't have copies for all of you, but if you want one, either contact me, put a little note on that sign-up sheet in the back, or ask. I've still got some. And on that sheet, we have, you know, the office for tonight. Here's Jean, our moderator, and a bio for Jean. It's hard to capture her whole, what? It's not loud enough? Okay. All right. On the front, in boldface, you see 4 questions. Now, those are the 4 questions that these 5 candidates were asked to complete on Vote 411. Vote 411 is a website where leagues from all over the country have decided to post their candidates and get questions for their candidates and every kind of information you could possibly want for their campaigns and things like that. So if you ever have an election question, you might just go and see if it's at that site. And what's the website? Vote411.org. Let's see what else. Oh, and to get onto that, there are so many ways, but the easiest is probably just to say you want to look at your ballot and type in your address. And in fact, you can type in addresses all over the country if you want to see what those things look like, right? So I have a few addresses I use. On the back of this handout, there are questions from other voting cycles, things that people have asked before, and I just thought you might be interested in seeing what they were. And Jean might use some of them, although I've already been given a lot of questions by some of you, and we'll make a priority of trying to answer your questions. I just want to remind you, no recordings, because we'd have to take the whole recording or nothing. So nothing used for shorts for candidates or something. What else was I going to say? No, I'll get to the, I've lost it. We do have two timekeepers. The person holding the signs, Jamie Egoff, and she will hold those up for the candidates during the first half, more or less. And then my partner, Al Tremblay, will do the second half. These guys are very strict. You'll notice they have bells and whistles and everything. They're just trying to keep you, sort of going on and on. Let's see, now what else? I don't remember anything else. All right, well, let me introduce Jean then. I'll read from the bio. Jean has worked at the University of Wyoming since 2000. Her work is focused on civic engagement, and she's the founding director of the Office of Engagement and Outreach at UW, as well as UW's Chief Engagement Officer. So Jean has frequently been called upon by UW for her leadership, and she's received many, many awards for her work, the teaching and all that leadership. She earned her PhD in political science with a concentration in international relations. She's the author of 3 books so far, numerous articles and book chapters that she did together with other people on American foreign policy, especially U.S.-China relations. One of her current projects is a book project about teaching civics. And you can see why the League of Women Voters might be particularly interested in that. And fun fact, she's related to UW's second president, Albinius Alonzo Johnson. I'll let her elaborate. And she's also a member of the League of Women Voters. So, Jean?
Well, it's my pleasure to be here tonight to learn from all of you and to take your questions. So if any league members have any questions, maybe, please, I'm looking for questions. So if you have some, maybe hold them up and somebody from the league will come around and pick them up. So to start us off, as I'm getting some questions coming in, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to give you all an opportunity to tell us who you are. Basically, I'm looking for your name, your career, and how long you've lived in Albany County. And let me just say that everybody has the fun opportunity to be first, but I'll be moving that down the line. So you're not always first and you're not always last. I'll be moving that along. But while you're doing that, and I would like to start with you, Chris, if I may, Chris Cleven, and just again, name, how long have you lived in Albany County, and what's your career?
Well, nice to meet everybody here. My name is Chris Cleven. I moved here in 1999, so I've been here this summer will be right at 25 years. Since I moved here, I actually got into the automotive industry. From there, I actually went to teach at WyoTech, and since then, I've actually been in public service, whether it was a volunteer firefighter, an EMT, or currently with the Laramie Police Department, where I've been for 16 years now. I can tell you, it's been a great time serving the citizens of Albany County. As far as, I guess you could say, different visions, there are a lot of, I guess you could say, some different regulations within Albany County. Some of the different things have become more of a impeding property owners, but otherwise, we're looking at being able to really work with the citizens.
Thank you. Brian Harrington.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Harrington. I have lived in Albany County since 2010, and outside of my professional life as a photographer and videographer and owning a production company, I live here with my lovely wife, Danny, my two beautiful daughters, Ruby and Alice, and in 2018, I was elected to serve on the Laramie City Council, again in 2020, and since 2022, I've been serving as the mayor of the city of Laramie. I think the thing that I might be most proud of in that time as the mayor is our ability, because of the makeup of the county commission and the makeup of the council, the ability we have had to work collaboratively in the same direction. I think it has been significant in improving the quality of service and the cost at which we are providing those services to the public. I think because we are working side by side on things like aquifer protection, providing EMS service into the county, we've been able to be quite fiscally responsible, and that's not always been the case. It's something I'm quite proud of.
Okay, Thad Hoff, and since the other two have taken the moment, if there's one thing you want to say, go ahead.
No, my name's Thad Hoff. I've been a permanent resident in Albany County since '03. I'm a Wyoming native. I own Wyoming State Safe and Lock company here in Laramie and provide locksmith service for mostly commercial and government entities now, and physical security for those types of things. Yeah.
Okay. And Julie McCallister.
My name is, excuse me, my name's Julie McCallister. I have actually lived here since 2000. Came back to go to the University of Wyoming for political science, a master's in public administration. I've actually read her books, which is hilarious in my mind. And only one was assigned. Moved up to Rock River in 2002 and have been there ever since. So not in the city, but been in the county, have no plans on leaving and certainly don't want to. Career-wise, done everything from heavy oil upgrading research with the university to now I take care of my disabled husband. He accidentally broke his neck in 2012. So my main full-time job is providing him with care. And meddle in politics on the side, and I try that to not be a dirty word. So yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much for your introductions. This first question, I'm going to start, Brian Harrington, you're going to be responding to this first. Do you support the initiative petition to reduce property valuations by 50%? And if so, how would you replace the funding for the programs and services supported by property taxes in focusing on courthouse offices, education, recreation, hospital, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you, Gene. I think I have a hard time supporting the 50% reduction in property tax because I have no clue how the county would go about backfilling that revenue. If the state's not willing to do that, then I have a hard time deciding, sort of which sheriff's deputies are not going to work for the county anymore. So, what I do support is targeted relief on property tax, but I'm not sure that this 50% petition is in the best interest of the public who expects services to be provided by their government.
Okay, I'm just going to go down the line this way. So, Thad, you're next. And I can repeat the question if you need it.
So there's actually two House bills that concern this 50% question. One is an exemption for veterans and longtime owners, and that is actually not a huge amount of money statewide. I think legislation estimated it to be about a $5 million knock based on 2023's taxable properties. The second one, I believe it's House Bill 43, is significantly more damaging for the state of Wyoming, and that number comes in estimated at about $50 million statewide. You divide that by 23 counties, and, I mean, the legislature doesn't even have accurate data for that impact yet, but that'll be retroactive for 2024, and people can seek relief. The county's gonna have to find economic influences. I have high hopes for rare earth mineral discoveries in the county, but we're gonna have to pave some groundwork to get more economic growth in the county. Minerals aren't coming out of the ground other than peat, lean, and that kind of thing, but that takes time to develop. So anything that happens now is gonna be 5-10 years down the road. So we just have to look forward to the future and try to lay the groundwork now.
Julie?
I would appreciate if you repeat the question.
Of course. Do you support the initiative petition to reduce property valuations by 50%? And if so, how would you replace the funding for the programs and services supported by property taxes, and then such as courthouse offices, education, recreation, hospital, et cetera?
Thank you. In all honesty, I'd sure like to, but I don't see how that's possible feasibly at this point in time. Reduction in taxes, reduction in income on any entity needs to be done incrementally, carefully, and with a plan for the future. Or else they're just not gonna last. The next cycle's gonna come around, there's not gonna be enough funding, and those programs are gonna be eliminated. If it's legislation, the legislation's gonna be reversed. So supporting something that is not sustainable out at least 30 years makes absolutely no sense. I would love it to be, but we need to do some actual work on this and make it easier, because the common sense of cutting property tax for certain priority groups makes perfect sense to me. And we've got a fairly good community of elderly in Albany County that have their property paid off. That's kind of a difficult question to answer for them specifically. So we need to do a little more work on this and make sure that we can make the numbers balance all the way out, not just a couple of years out.
Okay. Chris?
Thank you. To be honest with you, I guess I am going to be the oddball out here. In essence, do I support a full 50%? Probably not a full 50. However, at the same time, it would also be the choice of the voters. If the voters chose it, then we as county commissioners would have to figure out how to make it work. We don't get to pick and choose. If you're taking a look at it too, historically, our property values have been fairly stable, going up a little bit, and recently they've started to climb pretty aggressively. By cutting that 50%, depending on how far the property taxes go up, realistically, it may actually come back down to where it was 5-8 years ago. The services were still being provided. We just need to take a look at what is essential, make sure we're providing the essential services, and at the same time still reacting to what the voters are deciding. And if the voters have decided it, then we have to work within that mean.
Okay, thank you. So this next question is going to go to you first, Thad. And that is, what is your position regarding the lawsuit against Albany County Board of Commissioners and regarding that Casper Aquifer and zoning? And I'll just remind you all to put the mic in front of you and to face the audience so that you show up really well on the camera.
And you do have 90 seconds in which to answer.
Okay. Yes, you do have 90 seconds.
So my position on the Casper Aquifer, as valuable as water is around here, my feeling is that the boundaries and the limitations placed on top of the aquifer have been gerrymandered over the years to suit whatever political gain has come about. Not necessarily severely, but if there's an annexation in the works or wells being hyper tested around hot zones that become available, I would like to see. Now, getting back to the question, I think we're going to have to grin and bear it if elected. I think we need to work to solidify as concretely as we can anything that's been scientifically based.
And do you have a position on the lawsuit?
I don't.
Okay. Julie?
Thank you for the question. My position on the lawsuit, outside of the obvious that we have to wait for the courts to come back and give us an opinion on where to go forward from here, obviously the courts want an opinion on this, so we're gonna need to wait on that, is hopefully whatever comes out of it's constructive and we can move forward. Changes made recently, 35 acres to prevent leakage from septic systems, good example. Concessions have been made, but we're gonna need the courts to come back and give us some guidance on how to move forward on this. I don't think anybody is going to say it's a good idea to compromise our drinking water. So that's gonna be a pretty high agreement that everyone's gonna have, but it needs to be something that we have some guidance on, some futureness, so the city and the county can do the same thing, have the same program to prevent damage to that water source.
And may I ask you to repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. What is your position regarding the lawsuit against Albany County Board of Commissioners regarding the Casper Aquifer and zoning?
Position on the lawsuit, to be honest with you, without seeing all the documents on it, it's hard to actually come up with a position on that exact lawsuit. What I can tell you is, as a father of 5 children, one of the things I worry about for my kids is going to be housing, the cost of housing, of where it's going to be in a matter of 10 years. And one of the things you look at is, if you have property, can you subdivide to be able to provide them that? And when you start taking a look at what the different regulations are and what they prevented for families to be able to subdivide at different times to allow residences to be there, that's a little bit more, that's too much overreach. So the actual ins and outs of the lawsuit, I don't know all the ins and outs of that. I'm not a party to the suit. But what I can tell you is we also have to look at the private property rights. What are the rights of the people that bought the property? And what is the current usage that's allowed by the county? If it's labeled as residential, are they using it as residential? That's what we gotta look at.
Brian?
Thank you, Gene. You know, I would hope, as I said in my opening, I work very closely with the county commissioners to adopt regulations that, to Thad's point, were not gerrymandered. They were based in science, and the lines are, for the first time in a long time, identical between the county and the city plans. And I find, so I guess to be very direct, I would hope the county will prevail. I think there is little more important in Albany County than water. I don't know, I've heard flippantly the discussion of, we'll just build a water treatment plant. As maybe the only person sitting up here who, oversees the operations of a water treatment plant. We're not gonna be able to treat the water from the aquifer in any reasonably priced way. We're taking a resource that is clean and safe for us to consume and making it incredibly expensive. As a short anecdote, to Chris's point, housing is a significant issue in Albany County and everywhere, frankly, but the water that you need in your house, if you build a house on the Front Range, the first $40,000 of that house is acquiring a water right. So if we really need to consider the greater good of the public at large. The water is owned by the people of Wyoming, not the resident who lives above. So that would be my position on the lawsuit. I would hope the county will prevail. Sorry for talking in both directions and not into the microphone.
Okay.
I know.
Thank you for noting it.
Yeah, I'll try and improve.
Okay, our next question, we're going to start with you, Julie. The airport is run by a joint city-county board that was recently restructured to address past mismanagement. The restructuring has been criticized even though it put the airport on sound financial footing and regulatory or FFA footing. What are your views?
To be 100% honest, that board's always going to cause contention. I don't know of an airport board that doesn't. I'm really happy that from what I've been able to understand about it, financially, things are making sense, things are coming around for them, and it is more transparent to a number of people. But do I think there's room for improvement? Absolutely. That's only going to come from communication between commissioners, the public, and the board to make sure needs are being addressed, things are being done efficiently, and problems aren't being gotten into in the first place. So I think it's an improvement, but certainly not the end of the story where we can improve things.
Sorry, can you repeat that
Yeah.
question? It was, it had several facets to it.
Absolutely. The airport is run by a joint city-county board that was recently restructured to address past mismanagement. The restructuring has been criticized, even though it put the airport on sound financial footing and regulatory FFA footing. What are your views?
Well, right off the top, as far as sound financial footing, I don't think we're there yet. You know, when you stop and take a look at it, they just asked for a large amount of money from the city and the county. One of the things that with the airport that could be looked at is general aviation. How do we grow general aviation within our community? Those are the people that live here. Those are the people that are going to be investing here, building hangars. I've spoken with several individuals that have actually tried to build hangars, and they've actually pulled out. They've removed their interest in building a hangar and trying to add another flight school at our airport, simply because of the headache dealing with the airport board. There's currently an issue right now with a hangar that's being donated to basically like a club that's at the airport. And they've been basically arguing for the last, I'd say about 4 or 5 months, trying to get a land lease before they finally allowed them to donate the hangar to the flying club. And from that point, they're still trying to work out a equitable lease to make sure that they can financially afford to have it too. Those types of things I think we still need to look at. The fact that the airport is a service for our community. It is not a business. The intent of the FAA is to try to help them be self-sustained, but there's a reason why the feds give us money for the airport is because they understand it will not be fully sustained.
Brian?
Thank you, Gene. I serve as the liaison for the city council to the airport board, so I would say I'm deep into this. And to Chris's point, the airport is on sound financial footing for the first time in my entire tenure on the council, and is expanding in areas like general aviation, but the business park is the only portion that's really operating in a really reasonable way right now. So I do think the airport has places to improve, but I think when you look at the FAA violations starting at 42 when the board was changed over by the county and the city, to 1 now, and those original 42 were substantial. Those were like water in the gasoline at the airport, no audits on the financials, things that were significant, FAA grants that were going unaudited, to 1 that is the grass is too tall. I think the reality is that we were weeks away from losing our airport when the board changed, and so there will be growing pains, there will be frustrations by the public and the users, but there is no, there were few options that the governing bodies that manage that joint powers board had.
Thank you. Thad?
So in full disclosure, I do provide security services to the airport and have personally profited or gained from that in that regard. I was also part of the team that did the TSA evaluation this last time, and they did pass that. He had no recommendations other than, I believe they want to start screening one of the gates. The restructuring was necessary. There was perhaps, I don't want to say fraud, but it was necessary for a better oversight. And I also know that some of the rent collected on the hangars and some of the usage fees weren't even servicing the debt on the buildings themselves. So there was no contracts with some of the hangar owners, and I think that's been brought around so that it does actually operate as a business, and they are trying to service the debts and trying to dig out of a hole. There is a large amount of income gained from some of the folks that are flying in there. We see a lot of tourism dollars. We see a lot of traffic. I think the best thing for the airport right now is to get more people flying out of Laramie, either private or commercial, and keep the planes going, because that does bring in a huge revenue for not only Laramie and Albany County, but the surrounding counties, because it is a convenient location to land.
Okay, thank you. Chris, this question will start with you. What would you like to see changed in the county?
You know, I thought long and hard. One of the first things that I would like to see changed is probably an online poll. And what I mean by that is something to where people, it's known, it's common, and people can actually go online and be able to choose from an area if they're having an issue with something, if they're having concerns. And then every month, it's dedicated, or at least a portion of the meeting is dedicated to discussing it, figuring out what, if there is a problem, what resolutions there could be, but at the same time, is it feasible within the budget to look at that? That will help us come up with different ideas and different plans for the future as we're asking the state for different funding, or if a grant comes up, then we already have something in mind that we're able to actually look at.
Okay. Brian?
You know, I think for the first time in a while, I don't have much by way of criticism about the operation of the county. And I think there are obviously places that can improve. I mean, it's easy to say engagement with the public. It's a very hard thing to do. And, you know, I think the county has taken a lot of steps, you know, moving one meeting to the evening, allowing online participation, things like that. But I do think that decisions are easier to make and are more robust when the public is engaged. So engaging the public early on, I think, as early as you can, when sort of their voice is most effective, would be maybe one place that I would look to grow.
Okay. That,
Can you repeat the question?
absolutely. What would you like to see changed in the county?
Well, I have to agree with Brian. I don't think the county's in the wrong direction, or that I think where we're seeing a lot more input is people are engaging more with the process. Certainly from talking to people this year, there's a lot more interest in how the government operates. I think they're finding out that they didn't necessarily know who was in charge of what, or how the vote was cast, or how things actually transpired. And so we're getting a lot more input, and I think just opening up and being available to listen to anybody's input. I don't think the county's running amok. I don't see that. I think it'll be just a different version of stewardship. Thank you.
Julie?
Would you be sweet enough to repeat that one more time?
Absolutely. What would you like to see changed in the county?
I just wanted to make sure your verbiage was correct. I'm going to grab this, sorry. It's easier for me. I disagree. I think we absolutely have to do a much better job with public involvement, and it's not something we can solve with a single online poll or one set of early engagement plans. We're going to have to continue working at it every single day, over and over and over. One thing I do is, if I'm able to get what I'm asking for from the voters, is a once-a-month roundtable, somewhere that everyone can come, advertise it of my own time, my own volition, invite all the other commissioners and city council members so folks can come and ask questions for multiple reasons. One of them being people don't seem to understand whose job what is, and that we can help clarify that, answer those questions so they can be involved in the process at the time and place that they're interested in. Also, Albany County is huge. The diversity is enormous. There's no way you're going to spend 5 or 6 years in this job and know every inch of it. That's just not going to happen. There's too much going on. So we need that to be a constant thing. Having that door open will also give us the third huge advantage, which is knowing about problems before they become absolute total conundrums and nightmares. Boswell Road being an example of that. We could have been on top of it. We could have been ahead of it. From the door knocking I've been doing, I am shocked to find out it's one of a handful of roads. Ranchers, just in their beautiful tenacity, are, well, we'll figure it out, and I adore them for it, but they shouldn't have to be that way. We need to get on top of it, and we need to take it incredibly seriously and work on it every day.
Okay, that was a little bit fortuitous. Brian, here's the question. It's about Boswell Road access. So I'm going to go
I swear I didn't know.
Brian and
I just kept getting asked about it.
if elected, what solutions would you propose for Boswell Road access? What agency do you find responsible to finance and maintain the access?
You know, it's a great question. And what I have learned is my time on the city council is that these things really are more complicated than they ever quite seem. And to be honest, I don't know enough about the details to give you a straight answer, certainly about funding options. So I think there are always opportunities to speak with folks that live there and understand the issue better, which, is something I'll certainly do. But in the longer term, I think it's going to end up being one of those decisions that is never, there's not going to be a perfect solution, I guess. And so I guess I just leave it at that.
Okay. That,
So I think the Boswell Road is coming down to, we don't know who owns it or who wants to pay to maintain it and whose land it crosses now and whether it's been vacated. And I don't know if it's going to require a joint agreement between, or a memorandum of understanding with the Forest Service, or the county's going to have to figure out if 1/3 of it belongs to the county and 2/3. But historically, it's been there, people still use it. My house is within view of Highway 230, and I see the traffic coming in and out all summer long. Sunday night, our favorite thing to do is to sit out and watch and just count the campers going by. And you see four-wheelers and off-road everything. So I think the landowners that are adjacent to the road and are affected, I'm sure part of their concern is the dust and the debris, the mud, who's gonna close it, who's gonna have control over it, what season it's gonna be available. We're just gonna have to work through that with the Forest Service and see where that lands. But I don't think removing access is probably going to be a thing. I think it's just gonna be a matter of funding and finding a workable agreement.
okay. Julie?
And do me that favor one more time, would you?
Absolutely.
You're awesome.
If elected, what solutions would you propose for Boswell Road access? What agency do you find responsible to finance and maintain the access?
Again, wanted to make sure I nailed your verbiage, so I answered your question. Let's go to the second part of your question first, because it's the more complicated but easier to answer. Who's responsible for paying for it? The problem is no one knows. Looked into the history of this, dug into it, did what I call geek out about it, meaning I read every single legal case I could get my hands on pertaining to private and public privilege access through the United States Forest Service for grazing rights and other things that people would pay for. That'd be called privileged access, to just speed through it. And every single one of these situations ends up being some form of a compromise, an easement compromise, done in different lengths of time. And what it boils down to is who's going to pay for it. So I can't answer who's going to be responsible, because that's literally the essence of the first part of the question, the solution. How to solve that problem would be to bring the vested parties into the room and go, okay, guys, let's please fix this. What do y'all need? That's going to be the best way forward. Raising contention, making it worse, will make it worse. I was a little shocked to find documentation in the United States Forest Service going back over a decade involving this road. So it's not new. We need to be on top of it.
Chris?
Yeah, and, hearing everybody kind of talk about it, I hopefully agree with that on that. There is so much to that road. It goes back so long with all the different property owners and the access to that road. There is such a large volume of people going up to the county, going up to the mountains to use them now. We really have to figure out a way to keep that road open. What that looks like, I don't know at this point. As I said, it's hard to even understand exactly who owns the property right now. It seems like it's one of these hot potato items that the Forest Service doesn't want, the county doesn't necessarily want to probably own up to maintaining the road because it costs money. At the same time, also recognizing any type of MOU is gonna have to deal with negotiations. And unfortunately, it's gonna be negotiations with the Forest Service, which is a federal government. And we all know how that can probably end up. So it's gonna be a longer term issue that we're gonna have to work with, but at the same time, we need to be able to look at that and pave the path for any other future issues. You know, south of town, we have a road district. We had a road that had over 60 residents that were using it, and it had zero maintenance whatsoever. Throughout the time I lived out there, I was able to spearhead the actual formation of the road district. Of that, I'm the only one in the last 10 years that has successfully actually created a road district in our county.
All right, next question, we'll start with you, Thad. How would you better the county-city relationship if elected? I'll say it again. How would you better the county-city relationship if elected?
I don't know if there's a bad relation that actually exists between the city and the county. I think they're always going to coexist to some degree with the EMS, the services that are jointly used. Probably just understanding the city's needs and the county's needs and where they divulge and where they come together, and just treat that accordingly. Again, this comes back to steering the ship and which direction it's going to head. Some of the county residents don't necessarily rely on city services, but they do rely on the economics the city provides. So bearing that in mind, there's always going to be a relationship. I don't know, making it better or worse, I guess we'll see after the election, which direction the city council is also headed.
Okay. Julie?
I wrote this one down word for word, so you don't need to repeat it. Gonna have to disagree. I think the city and the county have some work to do. And the reason I would say that they have some work to do is they're not the same entity, period. They have one thing in common, and that is every single constituent of the city is a constituent of the county. The meetings should never be at the same time, ever. We need to solve that problem. The best way to solve that problem is after the election, all the city council members and the county commissioners sit down and look at calendars and see what we can do. How can we accommodate everyone a little bit better? How can we work together? That's one thing we need to start with immediately from the start. Also, the residents have different interests. In Albany County, you're going to deal with a huge amount of diversity. Rock River, where I live, is very different than Laramie. Centennial is also very different. High Siding's pretty different. Seville's pretty different. Places are different. So there's diversity that needs to be considered in county matters that the city doesn't have concerns for. City has separate priorities. That doesn't mean they can't have a beautiful working relationship, but that line should be clear, not only to the way they're governed, but to the residents themselves.
Chris?
Yeah, could you repeat that question one
Yes.
time?
How would you better the county-city relationship if elected?
How would I better the relationship with the city and county? You know, looking at it, I think it's actually doing pretty good right now. What people will have to realize is the city is different than the county. Like many of the other candidates already mentioned, they have different needs, they have different desires, whether it's in the city or the county. But let's face it, the city relies on the county and the county relies on the city. Whether it's the economics, whether it's the amenities. And so that's where we really have to look and work together to figure out what is a common goal for all voters? What are we looking for? How do we improve it for all the voters, not just the county, not just the city? How do we work together? I think a great part of that is the idea that the airport is a joint powers board. And so it's actually owned by the city and the county together. You know, there's different things that could take place there, but at the same time, we both need each other.
Thank you. So, just keeping track here. The next question.
Can I take a crack at that one?
Yeah, thank you.
You're one short.
I'm one short. Brian, let me repeat the question.
Oh, I think I got it, Gee, no problem.
All right, sorry
thank
about
you.
that.
I think the thing I'm maybe most proud of in my time on the city council is the way in which we have engaged as a council with the county commission, and it's something that I would insist on if elected. What we have found is that we are doing better work. We're doing work that is increasing government efficiencies, and it's in places that are critical to the public. like ensuring EMS service remains healthy in the county, so that folks in the county are served by this service that the city provides. It is the relationship the city and the county have with the detention center, the airport. All of those things are critical to the well-being of our community, both Albany County and obviously within the city. But I think there's always ways to improve, but I think they're going to be more issue-based. I think they're going to be specific to needs of the county, needs of the city, and having a strong relationship between the two governing bodies ensures that when those things come up, that we can work on them together. That saves the taxpayers' dollars and ensures that we're all working in one direction.
Okay, thank you for not letting me miss you, by the way. Okay, Julie, you're starting the next question, but we're gonna mix it up, we're gonna go that way. Okay, so it's Julie and then that, et cetera. Okay, what needs to be done for the Centennial area?
Just got done talking to them a few days ago. Roads, they would like access back, very much so. Be able to drive around up there, and probably a little more support for their fire department wouldn't be too bad of an idea. I was expecting that support to go up after the Mullen fire, didn't see it and was a little shocked. Had a few conversations with folks on some brainstorming ideas and ways they can get a little more funding in, but that would be the top two that I was personally asked about. Outside of that, that's what I was asked about, so that's what I'm gonna stick with, is what the voters told me.
Okay, what needs to be done for the Centennial area?
If the residents of Centennial would agree to an incorporation, that would help them gain ground, garner tax dollars, maintain better infrastructure. Right now, they're just bundled in with the county at large. They would benefit, as Rock River has, from tax apportionment, just with the incorporation.
Brian?
Centennial, I think, has an interesting and maybe unique set of issues that they feel that the rest of Albany County maybe doesn't. And the one that is front of mind for me is the price of housing in Centennial. That is, if we think it has exploded in Laramie, it has certainly exploded in Centennial. And housing policy is something I have become very knowledgeable. I think it would be substantially different than the housing policy we've put into effect in the city, obviously, because Centennial is a different place with different needs, right? We're not talking about apartment buildings in Centennial, of course. But I do know that is a force that is causing families that have been there sort of generationally to be forced to leave. And when you're a younger person and you can't afford to buy a house in the place that you love and the place that your family has loved for generations, that really has a knock-on effect to your sort of sense of community. I think there are some very specific things you could do to address that, but those would be for me to bring up maybe with folks in Centennial before they're ready for prime time.
Chris?
Thank you. That's how actually I was going to start this off with, is honestly what we need to do is have a good old roundtable with Centennial and find out what do they need, what are their concerns, what are they looking for. I know that it's one thing to say to support the volunteer fire department. That's exactly what it is volunteer. So you're going to have the people that are out there to assist and to help. I think the Albany County does a pretty good job with providing fire services to all the different volunteer fire departments across our county. We have a lot of different fire departments covering a lot of different areas. Sometimes the worst thing you could do is look at it as government and say, we're going to step in, we're going to fix something, if they don't even want something, if they don't want things to be done yet. So we have to find out what exactly is going on, if there are issues, and how do we actually work with them on fixing those issues. I know that in the city, the school board issues have been a big issue. They talked about closing Harmony down. Unfortunately, a lot of those are, or I should say fortunately, a lot of those are actually funded by the state. And so we can take a look at some of that to figure out, Can we get more students out there? What is it going to take to try to find more students? I know a lot of our county schools are actually by choice, so if somebody wanted to have their kids go out there, they can usually sign up through the county to go ahead and do that.
Okay. So I believe I can go on. I didn't miss anybody this time. Thad, this question's going to go to you first. Okay, very similarly, what needs to be done for the Rock River area?
Well, they're already incorporated, so I can't tell you that. I don't know that Rock River gets a lot of input when it's balanced against the Laramie area, and the representation is slim. Probably specific meetings, meeting with their town council, that kind of thing. The folks in Rock River are not shy about voicing an opinion. So I don't think it would be hard to gather opinions, but I think the effort needs to be made to reach out through the mayor, the town council, and if just a representative or a liaison.
Yeah, I think Thad's point is right on, that we certainly have opportunities to learn what folks in Rock River would like to see more of. I think as we near the end of sort of like our specific purpose renewals, there will be a significant amount of conversation that happens with Rock River because of the sort of the relationship to the statutorial requirements of the sort of county and the two incorporated towns agreeing. And so, I would look forward to that as maybe an opportunity to begin that conversation. In sort of a detailed way. I think I'm currently serving as one of the board members for the new Albany County Transportation Authority. And this is a conversation we just had 2 weeks ago in the first meeting. Well, Rock River isn't in this meeting, they ought to be in this meeting because public transit should also serve Rock River if we're going to do it in the city and the county. So it is on my mind. It's something that I think is valuable and certainly should be valuable to any county commissioner.
Chris?
Yeah, I think, I'll say it right out front. Rock River, the school there is amazing. My oldest daughter actually just graduated, I should say just about a year ago or so from there. Phenomenal school, phenomenal town. When I do get up there for some of the different sports that she was in, it was nice to see a small town. It was nice to see the park. We were able to stop at the park to be able to let the kids out and play while we were waiting for different events to happen. That being said, I agree. Some of the transportation issues that we have trying to get up there and back can get dicey. We all know how winters are in Wyoming. But Rock River in general, I think, from years past, one of the big things that they would most look at is their property values. They don't have the same amenities as Laramie. They don't have the same structures as we have. However, some of the arguments I hear from them is that their property values are always higher than what they feel like they could actually sell their properties for. And so they're paying more in taxes and feeling like they get less services out there.
Julie?
Well, that was serendipitous. I live in Rock River, if you didn't know already, and have for a long time. Can you repeat the question, just so I get the verbiage correct?
Yes. What needs to be done for the Rock River area?
Okay, what needs to be done for Rock River? Same thing that needs to be done for every single rural community in the county. Ask them. Don't assume. Go find out. One thing that's actually fantastic about Wyoming and this county is the people are very independent, they're tenacious, and what they need, they know. I remember about a decade ago, and I'm probably wrong, it's probably sooner or later because I'm not remembering correctly, and I'm younger than I think I am, or older than I think I am, one of the two. We had to call in the National Guard to clear the snow off the roads. And it wasn't because we had a ridiculous amount of snow we couldn't handle. It's because the way it blew in and drifted, we couldn't clear everyone's driveways. We couldn't keep the elderly people's driveways clear. We couldn't make it to where they could get to the interstate. Interstate was clear, but we couldn't. Little communities like Rock River get awful good at taking care of themselves because the people are good at taking care of themselves. I have no idea how many times a week my phone goes off and someone asks me for a loaf of bread or an onion or something like that. I know right now what they need is money for mosquito spray.
Okay. I think we're starting, yeah, we're ready for any question. Just making sure. Okay, Brian, you're starting us on this question. How would you bring economic development to Albany County? Are there any specific opportunities you can identify?
Yeah, certainly. I'm a small business owner myself. I own 2 businesses in Albany County, and and have been engaged in economic development for the entire time I have lived in Laramie. So I think one of the ways, it's an incredibly complicated question, and I think the first thing I would say is housing availability has to be a priority, and it's not so much that's not necessarily in the county's wheelhouse. That's more of a city issue to sort of sort out as the population center. But without more housing, we will have a hard time growing our economy. But I think Albany County does have a relatively diverse economy by Wyoming standards. And we also have the University of Wyoming. So I think through sort of like research and development is, I think, a real opportunity for the county to spin out things from the university and find them here, because people that build a business here are not going to leave, right? They're gonna, those aren't folks that are gonna leave when it gets cold in the winter, right? So if we can grow our businesses here, we'll keep them.
Okay. Chris?
Thank you. Can I get the second part of that question?
Sure. Let me do the whole thing. How would you bring economic development to Albany County? Are there any specific opportunities you can identify?
So you take a look at the economic development. One of the things that I noticed, I've obviously been around long enough driving around on south on 287. The area south of the port of entry, that's actually been a very good growth. It's been slow, but it's been finally starting to expand to the point where we're getting more and more businesses out there. I think by having availability, having areas for businesses to come in and maybe relax some of the regulations, whether it be the overburdened landscaping regulations that might take place. Again, that's going to be with the city, not with the county, but at the same time, we also have to look at that and say, hey, what can we do and work together to try to help bring businesses in? At the same time, we want to make sure that we're not bringing in just every single business that we can that's going to close down any type of smaller mom and pop stores. The businesses will bring jobs, the jobs will bring the economic growth, the jobs will bring, sorry, it got distracted by the sign there. It's hard. With the growth of the jobs, we'll be able to bring better cost of living and accessibility to housing. I think that's where the cooperation between the city and the county is going to be huge, looking at the housing, looking at that economic development to work together to try to improve. We have a lot of area in the county that we could grow.
Okay, Julie.
I won't make you repeat it, fair? All right, economic development. I think I first became deeply involved in campaigning in 2014. I have yet to be at a forum where this type of question doesn't get asked, so it's kind of a fun one. But unfortunately, the answer that seems to be the most accurate never seems to happen, which is listen to the people. I can't count how many businesses I've seen open in the last 20 years in Albany County, and it's amazing. And I'm kind of surprised Chris didn't bring it up because he does raw milk, if I'm correct, which is fantastic that we can do that here. That forms back to what he was saying, something I agree with, which is having a look at relaxing certain regulations, allowing diversity, allowing the variety, allowing the independence to thrive in the county. That's going to make good long-term economic opportunities that'll bring with it sustainable housing, sustainable income. But we need to be receptive off of the public. We need to ask, we need to listen and solve problems. That's how we're always going to get the best decisions. That's pretty much the job of a commissioner if you sum that up and add purse strings to it. But I'm serious about it. I've heard fantastic ideas and I've heard insane ideas. But off of certain insane ideas, you'll get a little bit of a beautiful silver lining. So we need to listen, we need to be receptive and use our best resource, which is the residents.
I'm good. So I actually tend to talk to quite a few local businesses as they're either starting or moving in. And the thing I hear, especially from Colorado folks that are coming up to Wyoming, are Colorado businesses are coming. They're tired of the Colorado politics. They're tired of the pot. They're tired of all the legislation down there. And when they get to Laramie, they're not looking for Fort Collins. So the city and the county cannot be the hindrance for them not wanting to move here or relocate. I've also heard a lot of complaints about the infrastructure. Now sites are zoned, ready to go, ready to build lots, but there's not sufficient piping in the ground. There's not accommodations for natural gas. There's not enough power. There's not enough three-phase. So that's all stuff that it's levers to pull. The county and the city need to endorse to various degrees to bring that infrastructure up, and I think everybody's a little behind. I think Cheyenne's done a very good job of trying to entice, and I think we've got the Laramie Business Alliance in place, and we can lean on those folks and try to endorse and be the catalyst to bring more business here. But it's going to be years before we see full development.
Okay, thank you. I think we're ready for any question. This one starts with you, Chris. How would you approach new renewable energy development and subsequently protecting viewscapes?
Well, to be honest with you, that question hits home. I actually just, about 3 weeks ago, got the permit back from the county to put a wind turbine on my property. It wasn't necessarily due to the view, it was due to the cost of everything that we're paying for now. And if I can save $50 a month on my electric bill, then I'll try to do that. At the same time, you know, the property that we have is what I purchased, knowing that I purchased the land I have. I can't control the land that's my neighbor's. I can't control my view. That's going to be a personal preference. Now, at the same time, with renewable energies, I know that in years past there was a really big uproar in reference to the large wind turbines going up. That's a complicated situation, but I think ultimately what it comes down to is private property rights. What are the rights of the people that live out there? What the property that the turbines are going to go on? What kind of economic impact is that going to have on those individual people that own that land? I understand the view is extremely important. My master bedroom window faces the Snowy Mountains. I enjoy it. We built our house with that design. But at the same time, I also have the understanding that somebody may put something up that would block that view. That's part of the idea of not being able to purchase a ton of acreage.
Julie.
Sorry, it's the world's loudest remote or microphone when you move it around. That's going to be a difficult one. One of my favorite people, who I call my adopted dad, which is a bit of a joke and a funny one if you understand our relationship. He's in his 70s. He hates wind turbines with a passion. And I've listened to him complain about them for about 4 years for every day. And unfortunately, I started to get his point because he has one. They are there. Yes, they're on private land, the ones he specifically complains about, but they do impede the view. So my point is I've come to respect his opinion to a slight degree. I appreciate the jobs. I would like to know why we don't own any transmission lines, and I'd like to know if we can't figure out a way to make that possible, especially countywide. That would be a much better guaranteed income. A lot of other states do it. So I've been asking questions about that one for quite a while and haven't got a whole lot of answers other than the wind tax went up while I was questioning it. But I have respect for the fact that's going to have to be balanced. But again, it is the private property owner's decision. In the end, that is the law, and I'm going to be a strong supporter of private property rights if it comes down to that, period. But anywhere that's on public land, state land, BLM, I think we definitely have to talk to the public and respect their view. I still don't dislike them, But I can understand someone's viewpoint for not wanting them there.
I have a mixed relationship with the wind turbine economics. A wind turbine, at least in 2016, took about 10 years for its cost to materialize. And it also took about 10 years to wear out. So there's an overhaul required. Now, a lot of jobs have been created in the north part of the county for maintainers and crane crews and overhaul crews, and I applaud that they're bringing jobs to the county. But the folks that actually make the money off the wind turbines aren't in Albany County. They're relying on the tax credit and government, federal government stakes. Solar, I would see being viable if we can figure out energy storage in a better manner than having to put a natural gas plant right next to it to offset the demand. If you don't know that the companies with the wind turbines have to bid how much energy they're going to put into the electrical grid, and if they don't, then they have to fire up a natural gas turbine sitting right next to the wind turbine to offset that. So I don't know that there's actually an economic gain for individuals other than the jobs here. So that's my hitch with renewable energy.
Brian?
So I think there are solid points made all around here. I think there should be some consideration for siting of wind turbines that includes wildlife. And, you know, we certainly all value that, but I think at the end of the day, you know, sort of what you do on your property is your own choice. And so that, you know, maybe the county commission doesn't have a lot to say there beyond sort of the siting process. But I think it is incredibly hard to look past also the consequences of climate change in this conversation as well. And there is a need to invest I mean, I think it's becoming economically sound to invest in these things that also have that, you know, sort of like small secondary effect of maybe they help prevent catastrophic warming. And so I think it would be hard to say no initially in a situation like this with no details, right? Like from a 30,000 foot perspective, I certainly support renewable investments in Albany County, but the devil is always in the details, right? So, but I guess for the easy answer, for the sort of soundbite, I'm largely supportive.
Julie, this next question will start with you. How will you support solar and wind to power county facilities?
Well, thank you for that question, and boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had a whole lot of money to spend on new county facilities. But as far as I understand it, we don't. If that becomes a possibility in the future, I don't have a problem whatsoever looking at them. Some of them can be a net zero in the long run, so I think it's a good thing to have a look at. But the county is going to have to come along with finance before it's going to be building new buildings and doing any major works projects.
Okay. Thad?
I think solar for county facilities would be great. Most of their usage is done during the day. The offset would be minimal. There's no storage requirements for nighttime operations, and otherwise you can pull it off the grid. I don't know about wind, but I'm all for making a building run more efficiently because it costs the taxpayers less money to actually use the darn thing and heat it and cool it. So if we're pulling solar, great, they're on the roof. Nobody even knows they're there. Yeah.
Okay, Brian, how will you support solar and wind to power county facilities?
Thanks, Gene. Yeah, I have a pretty strong voting record of supporting these things. And in particular, I think maybe to Julie's point about the financials, the city and the county, frankly, have been really effective at leveraging the Rocky Mountain Power Blue Sky Grant program to fund these projects, and I would continue doing that. I think there's plenty of space left. You are limited, of course, by the state statute net metering law, but which was sort of consequential in regards to the Municipal Operations Center because we have like a tiny little solar project on the roof of a gigantic building. And could have done so much more with that, but are limited by statute. So to the extent that statute allows, I am very supportive. We've seen the cost of running buildings like the rec center, the ice and event center, and the municipal operations center. We've seen those prices come down after installing solar. And because we were smart and leveraged grants to install, we're seeing benefit from the start.
So to support the solar and wind power of county facilities, I agree with that in the aspect that when you start talking about the volunteer fire departments, the places that are out there in the county, it will drastically help. However, at the same time, I also want to make sure we're not just jumping on the bandwagon of renewable energy. We're stopping to take a look at what is the return on investment. If it's going to cost $80,000 to put solar panels or whatever it may be, that renewable energy, but yet the electric bill for that building is not that high yet, maybe we stop and take a look at it. Can we use those funds to deal with grading the roads out on Fetterman Road? Can we deal with those funds somewhere else? Looking at the cost of of just general storage batteries, they started to come down. I think as technology increases, there's going to be more and more available resources for us to use. But I think it's great, like what the city has done, utilize the grants. We look for those grants, work with the state to see what we can do to try to figure out the best way to fund those. But at the same time, we always have to focus on the return on investment. Just because it sounds good doesn't always mean it's gonna be the best for our pocketbook.
Okay. Thad, this next question will start with you. Do private property owners have a right to subdivide? Please explain.
Yes and no, and I agree to within limits. There's a lot of folks that are buying land that probably shouldn't necessarily be subdividing based on the infrastructure that surrounds them, in regards to, especially in the county, septic and well locations, and having enough room for repair zones once those leach fields fail. Within reason, I think it needs to be balanced. I think the county engineer probably needs to step up a little bit in regards to a plan of action and what the county's already seeing for citizens coming in wanting to do that, and try to come up with a cohesive, and I know that has changed, and there are people upset because of the acreage restrictions. But what they have to, those protections are in place for a reason.
Okay.
I think that obviously the county is authorized to regulate zoning and by state statute, and I don't think that when you purchase land, you have an inherent right to subdivide it, and certainly not in any way that you see fit. And so I think this question probably is largely directed at the Casper Aquifer Protection Overlay Zone, right? So it is, in that regard, I think the limits are reasonable and are based in science and are based in ensuring that the rest of the county maintains its clean drinking water source into the future.
Okay, Chris?
I would disagree. I don't think that question is really focused on the Casper Aquifer. I think that's a very small percentage of the county residents that actually live on the Casper Aquifer Protection Zone. Do I believe that, do I support subdivision? Yes, I do. That's somebody's right to their property, however they want to handle that. Now, the county has regulations in place that will allow or disallow the type of subdivision that takes place. If there's issues with the subdivision, we have to look at those regulations. How are those regulations set up? What do they say? Is it allowed for residential? What is the size for the rural residential versus small lot residential? Those are all things that are already on the books, and we just have to work within those. When we start messing around with the size of a small lot residential, but then start messing around with, well, you can have this on there, but you can't have that. That's where the problems come up, and that's where people start becoming really upset, because we're essentially we are making rules and regulations that fit some people, but not everybody in the county, and making it fair for everybody.
Julie?
Would you repeat it for me?
Of course. Do private property owners have a right to subdivide? Please explain.
Okay, I'm going to answer your context as broad as it is. Yes, so long as they don't hurt anybody else. You're allowed to do whatever you want on your private property, so long as you don't injure another party. So if you're dumping gasoline on the ground 24/7 and you're next to the river, that might be a bit of a problem, is going to be the large general answer to this question. Within reason, what should the county take into consideration for zoning and subdividing? Quite a bit. We need to understand what's going on with usage, utilities, services, roads, ability to provide, an ambulance or police officer out there, should they need it? Is that a possibility? Is that something they're aware of? Can we zone for this? These are all questions that are going to have to be taken step by step. But I'm going to lean towards the private property owner. So long as no one else is being injured, that's their property.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, we'll start with you, Brian. What is your take on Laramie landlords lobbying the legislature to pass laws to get around local ordinances? Who actually governs Laramie? Let me just add, in Albany County, and who ought to?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's near and dear to my heart. The courts have ruled at this point that the city is well within its rights to regulate to the extent that the city has regulated the health and safety standards of rentals. And it's obviously well within a landlord's right to lobby their representative in any way they'd like. So I don't have any objection at all to that. I would hope that if the legislature takes this up, that what they do is not say that, sure, maybe there's a problem, you can't fix it, we're not going to either. I would hope that if that is, that the decision, that maybe we can recognize that it might affect other communities beyond Laramie. Because I've certainly had conversations with mayors and councils in other cities that it is an acute issue there as well. And, I think one thing that's lost here is largely the regulation on rentals. It is specific to health and safety. It's that if you are in a basement apartment, you should be able to get out if there's a fire. You should have heat, you should have hot water, your door should lock. Those things are largely outlined in state statute already. What the city has done is actually create a mechanism at the city to enforce those, because state statute is deemed maybe not a very effective way at enforcing those, as was illustrated in some local reporting about ways in which landlords have evaded justice, I think, to be quite frank about it.
Chris?
And can you repeat that question?
Yes.
I didn't quite hear the whole thing.
What is your take on Laramie landlords lobbying the legislature to pass laws to get around local ordinances? Who actually governs Laramie and Albany County? That's my addition. And who ought to?
Well, what's my take on them lobbying? I think it's actually great that they're engaging with the lawmakers, that they're talking to them. They're trying to figure out, okay, if this didn't work for us, how do we fix it? I think that's great to have that communication there. However, you start taking a look at too much government overreach causes problems. Sometimes we're fixing problems that aren't there. Now, am I saying that every landlord out there in Laramie was providing safe and adequate residences? No, I'm sure not. But at the same time, over-regulation can actually stifle. I've heard of a lot of people that have sold their property that have decided to move out of the city just simply because of the over-regulation and the burdensome issues that they're having. You start taking a look at the registration fees. At the end of the day, it feels like all it is taking money and funding simply to provide a larger government.
Julie?
Not going to make you repeat that one. I wrote it down. My personal take on it, if they are lobbying just their local representatives, it's pretty easy to tell who's going to vote which way, and after the election, it'll be pretty easy to tell which way they're going to vote on that as well, but they won't be. They'll be lobbying every single person they can speak to up there. I do hope that renters are doing the same and exercising the same rights and making sure they're getting information from both sides of it, and I certainly hope our legislators are doing their job and talking to both sides, is my take on it 100%. If that's happening or not, who knows? I've lobbied for a number of things, and usually it's the ones that hustle and run that get it done. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes out. Who runs Laramie and Albany County and who should? That's an incredibly philosophical question, and in 90 seconds, that is completely unfair, even for like a PhD, so not nice. So I'm only gonna answer the end of it. Obviously, the residents, that's not a joke for me. I'm smart enough to know we need a group to get the best results. And that's what we need to be having governing the county, governing the city. And it's difficult because the more things you have going on and the more wheels that are turning, the more things you need to attend to, but you're going to get the best results by putting in the most effort, period.
That,
I'm just going to say I would hope for diligence on the part of the legislature to acknowledge that there is a problem, and it's not just Laramie that has been affected. It does create, or it is a unique situation that Laramie has with the four-year college or university. But in the last 20 years, I've been in a lot of places where people shouldn't be living. There are a lot of units in this town that people have not reinvested any kind of income back into their property, and they're expecting kids and young adults to come here and live in a place and in sometimes a panic or pinch situation to try to find reasonable accommodations. We're asking for more economic development in the county. We're looking for more tax dollars. With better rentals come better tenants, and people just have to understand that if they're trying to provide their sole income based on their rental property, it doesn't work. I'm a landlord. I have commercial property, but I have commercial property that if we don't maintain, my wife and I, don't maintain it, then we don't have businesses moving in there. It's not a prospect for them at all. So who runs, the city has stepped in and started the process. I think there probably actually needs to be a little bit more in city limits, but time's up.
I think we have time for two more questions. And this one we're going to start with you, Chris. Where do you get your information on local doings? Is the boomerang appropriate?
To be honest with you, I don't look at the boomerang very much. We live out in the county, and ever since they went down to fewer days, I just haven't. I see it at work sometimes, but otherwise, a lot of stuff I get is talking to people. Obviously, just like anybody else nowadays, the internet. I mean, you can't go anywhere without looking some things up on the internet. Growing up, yeah, we had the encyclopedia. We had to go to those things. Now, they're all on the internet. But you also have to be careful of what you're looking at. You have to make sure that the sources are accurate and that you're getting reliable information from there as well. You do have to be careful with what you're looking at, though.
Okay, Julie, where do you get your information on local doings? Is the boomerang appropriate?
Thank you for the question. For Rock River, it's fairly inept most of the time. If you're speaking local doings, you're gonna need to go talk to folks. I do read the Boomerang, read Casper Star-Tribune. I also read Cowboy State Daily, listen to the radio, and talk to people, look online, check outside sources. Chris and I are in complete and total agreement that you need to check sources on any published site, period. I don't care who they're from, especially if they're local. It's fairly easy to get people's phone numbers. More than once I've called on a local story and actually called the person in. They're like, no, not exactly. And I'm like, really cool, would you mind telling me? And you get a different story than what's published. So you're gonna have to finish looking into it to be accurate, but all those things take a little bit of effort. So you have to put your time in.
A lot of my information comes from business doings. I don't take the boomerang. A lot of online, Facebook is kind of the go-to at this point, the different forums, because you can join the groups and there are people that do actually contribute. Right now, I'm waiting patiently to see when the mosquitoes are going to get sprayed because of the Harmony District. I think like everybody else that is affected. But I do talk to quite a few people in my daily life, and I think just from being a candidate this year, I'm finding out that a lot more people are trying to be engaged. So they're not holding back and just kind of hemming and hawing and seeing what happens. This year, people want to be engaged. They want to know what's happening. They want to get their opinion out. They want the folks that are running for office to know where their concerns are, and they're not shy about voicing those. So I think it's a matter of listening and understanding and at least taking it in and not dismissing anybody's opinion.
Brian?
Forgive me. Complicated question, right? I mean, plenty of specifics, right? So, I mean, I read the Boomerang, I read the Laramie Reporter, I listen to public radio, all of the things, right? I do not get news from social media, and I think that is one of the things that might separate me from a few folks. Because as somebody who sits in the room where the conversation is happening with all the facts, social media is not always, and is often not a reliable place to get your information. And it may be a very reliable place to hear some conversation is happening, but the details of that conversation are not being relayed accurately on social media. And I think if you take social media as more of like the opinion section of your local paper, you might find a better fit. But I think maybe I have a unique position though, because I am an elected official. I am having, like, some of the news I am present for. And so maybe that's like why that feels complicated to me. So yeah, I guess I just caution folks from the social media groups. I think they are, like I said, great for notifying the public, but the council has spent a considerable amount of energy trying to sort this out. And I think to the heart of that question, it's really about how to notify folks better and bring them in a more effective way, because we can't rely so much on the institutional fourth estate in the way we could at other times.
Okay. All right, I'd ask the timekeeper, this is a 30-second question, and it is the last question. I'm going to start with you, Chris. What would be your top priority as county commissioner? 30 seconds.
Top priority is going to be, number one, is going to be private property rights. We got to look at that. We have to figure out how to make sure that people's property is being taken care of, making sure that they have the ability to make choices that they want to make within reason and within regulation.
Okay, Brian.
My top priority would be to continue the cooperative spirit between the county commission and the city, because I think it leads to a level of efficiency and fiscal responsibility that you can't otherwise achieve, and allows you to do projects that really need to be joint efforts, like protecting our drinking water.
Funding. Nothing's going to get done. There's going to be a pitfall or shortcoming with the property. And Albany County's always struggled with funding and how much money it's got in the coffers. There's just an incredibly small amount of money coming in compared to other counties and such a large area to service.
Also funding, but a slightly different prospect on that. Grants are absolutely wonderful things until they run out. I watched a school district fall apart and fall on its face as a kid that my mom taught in because they were reliant on grants and didn't have enough county monies coming in. And that's exactly what can and will happen. We've got to get financial freedom and independence. It's very difficult. It's going to take a ton of work, but just relying on grant after grant is going to get us in trouble time after time. We've got to find a way to get independent and take care of things on our own. It's not undoable. We just have to ask the right questions.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your questions. These were your questions. Can we give our candidates a hand, please? A couple of reminders. There's going to be 30 minutes or so. I believe the candidates will be hanging out. And if your question did not get asked, please do ask it of them. There's one thing I want to make sure we do. There's several people in the room who might be running for office or currently hold an office. If you are running for office or currently are in a Albany County office, would you just stand and identify yourself and the office you're running for? Yeah. So sitting in a position, again, just your name and either the office you hold or the office you're running for. Others, anybody else?
Two of the three.
Go ahead.
Mike Selmer, I'm running for Senate District 10.
They're not running on city council for another 2.5 years.
Okay.
Pete slipped
Pete?
in late.
Oh.
Jennifer's currently Ward 2 and running for re-election in Ward 2.
Brandon Newman, also on Ward 2. Good evening, Pete. It was our Albany County Commission.
Okay, so they have been identified, some of whom are running, there'll be additional forums. I need to give, Lynn, do you have any additional announcements? Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Lynn.
Let's give Jean a big hand. It's not easy sorting budget here. Okay, I wanted to, well, there are a couple of people who are in some kind of office or committee that didn't stand up. Do you want to stand up now? Okay, next time. Donald, I'm looking at you. Anyway, let me remind you, the county clerk is looking for poll judges. The process is a little different this year, although she seemed to keep my volunteer application live, so I didn't have to go to anybody and say, I want to be a poll judge. But presumably, if you're in a party, you go to the party, and if not, you contact the county clerk. One thing I did want to say that I forgot before, and that was that the question shouldn't be embarrassing, gotcha questions. Oops. They shouldn't be embarrassing, they shouldn't be gotcha questions. And we did get one of those. I'll read it out and you can see maybe why we didn't ask it. But I've also gotten email from some people who didn't quite understand the transparency of our questioning process. And the question is, who won the 2020 presidential election? Okay. So there's that. Don't anybody answer. Let's see, what else? I want to thank the library again. As you may know, through social media perhaps, that the National Library Association, the ALL, and the National League of Women Voters are officially partners in voting and getting people registered. And so, I'm sure that other libraries and leagues have been partnering like us, but now it's official. So, hello, sister. And we didn't introduce Shane, so why don't you introduce Shane, Rachel?
Behind our lovely controls, Shane has spent a lot of time learning and setting up, and I'm breaking all the rules because people online are just here in silence, and that's okay. But a big thank you to Shane for all of this work, for making all of this.
Okay, so, like I said, we're going to have a forum every Thursday. That's 5 Thursdays up through the 25th of July. And it'll be here. What was I going to say? Oh, I think our moderator for next week is going to be Peter Parolin. Some people remember him from last year. He did one forum. Anyway, if you know somebody who wants to be a moderator, either now or for the general, just let me know. Anyway, I thank you all for coming. I thank our timekeepers. I thank our candidates. And let's give them one last applause.
So how accurate is that?